Good evening and welcome. My name is Dirk and I'll be today's moderator. Thank you for joining this live, interactive telephone town hall. We're hosting this event as another way for Mayor Jackson to speak directly with you wherever you are and reach as many of you and answer as many questions as possible. This evening, we'll be discussing the coronavirus pandemic and the mayor's strategic plan for rebooting Cleveland's economy in a safe and responsible manner. His plan has a special focus on assisting residents and local businesses with resources aimed at helping them weather the economic turmoil brought on by the coronavirus. Now, as you may know, Mayor Jackson is in his fourth term, which will make him the city of Cleveland's longest-serving mayor. During his time in office, Mayor Jackson has been an advocate for building equity and opportunity for all Clevelanders in all neighborhoods. Joining Mayor Jackson this evening is Congresswoman Marcia L. Fudge. Congresswoman Fudge is a committed public servant who brings a hard-working, problem-solving spirit to Congress and to the task of creating jobs, protecting safety net programs, and improving access to quality public education, health care, and healthy foods. First elected in 2008, she represents the people of the 11th Congressional District of Ohio. Congresswoman Fudge has served the people of Ohio for more than 3 decades. Now, as I mentioned, this is an interactive forum, and we would love to hear from you. We'll be taking as many questions from participants as we possibly can live on this event. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your phone keypad at any time, and you'll be placed in line to speak with a member of our staff. They'll take down your name and location. Then the next time you hear your name, you'll be live on the call and able to ask your question directly. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we possibly can this evening. Now, we receive a lot of questions on our live events. So if we're not able to address your question, please stay on the line to leave a voicemail after the event or send us an email at communications@clevelandohio.gov. Again, if you have any questions throughout the event, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. Now, I'll turn it over to Mayor Jackson.
Well, good evening, and how is everyone doing? Thank you for participating in this event, and say welcome to you. Before I get started with my opening, I would like to introduce my partner in serving the people of this part of Ohio, and that is Congresswoman Marcia Fudge. Congress lady.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you for having me today to be a part of this call. It's very important, and I appreciate the fact that you are reaching out to our constituents to tell them what's happening. I'm just going to be very, very brief and talk about what we're doing federally. As you know, there are lots of things that have happened over the last month and a half, but in a nutshell, the federal government has put about $2 trillion in various programs: unemployment insurance, payroll protection, testing, money for hospitals and for healthcare workers. So we've done a lot. I'm here to answer questions and here to be supportive of our mayor. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Well, thank you, Congress lady. As the Congress lady has said, there's the fact that the federal government has identified on the first round of funding $2 trillion really indicates the magnitude of the problem that we're facing, problems that we're facing with the coronavirus, and that impact not only on individuals and families and communities, but also on business and our economy. And as you know, we're right at that decision-making point, and there's a lot of debate and discussion throughout the country, really throughout the world, as to where we are in terms of the pandemic and the health of people and what actions we should take to ensure people stay healthy versus, in many ways, an economy that has taken a free flight downward in terms of loss of jobs, businesses closing, and really loss of service delivery in retail kind of activity and production. So this virus and pandemic has had a significant impact on our social and economic way of life. And the debate is, what do we do? And now there are many states that are taking the action of going back and basically turning on the light switch and moving back into what they believe is a turning on of the economy with some restrictions. Here in Ohio, I believe Governor DeWine is taking a responsible approach in doing that in a more moderate and thoughtful way of gradually opening. But at the same time, what we want people to understand is that because it is happening does not mean the pandemic is over. As a matter of fact, the number of infections continue to go up and go up pretty rapidly, and the number of deaths and fatalities are going up, and they're going up rapidly. So that means as the economy opens, there will begin to be more interaction between people, even with the restrictions that are put on, which means that there is more likelihood that the pandemic will not only stay around, but it may increase as people come in contact with each other, and there may be more infections and deaths if we do not address the health end of this. Now, here in Cleveland, recognizing this, we know that people and businesses, particularly small businesses, are suffering. So we put together a pot of money that would allow us to help relieve and mitigate that burden and suffering of people and small businesses, and better help them to be able to recover or take advantage of the gradual reopening of our economy and stay safe at the same time. Ultimately, since we will be in a new reality, the reality of yesterday does not exist anymore. And we're going to have to have a conversation and a direction and decisions and policies around what is that new reality once we come out of this pandemic. But right now, we're in the midst of it. And so we put together something to help small businesses and people, not only in terms of at the economic side, but in the social side of the impact of the loss of jobs. And at the same time, we're putting significant deployment of resources and people to ensure that we can double down on those things we need to do on the health side in regards to education, prevention, and intervention, so that as these things happen and restrictions are being removed, that people can stay healthy. It is a delicate balance, and it is something that we have to be on every day, all day, in order to be successful in our goal of reopening the economy at the same time ensuring the health of people. So we're open for questions, and be glad to hear what's on your mind.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jackson. Now, as a reminder to everyone on the call, this is an interactive forum, and we'd love to hear your questions. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time to get into the queue to ask a question. A member of our staff will collect your questions, and we'll answer as many as we can during this live event. Again, press *3 on your keypad at any time to get into the question queue. Matter of fact, let's go out to James, who's in Cleveland. James, you're live on the call. What's your question?
Mayor Jackson,
yes, sir.
Good to talk to you.
Yes, sir.
I don't have a question. I have a concern. And my concern is one that you share. Opening up the city or the state as a whole without being able to get it clean as it should be, because of the fact that we have let folks out of jail. They didn't have medical. They didn't have no money. They didn't have nothing. So they ended up on the streets. So my concern is this, with the fact that elderly folks will be in the street, they'll end up sick themselves, and you'll have a bunch of folks in a minute claiming that they're disabled, and Social Security will be a hectic thing.
If I can respond, James.
Go ahead.
Okay. Oh, you point out the real picture. You painted the picture of the dilemma that not only government is in, but is business in, and how do we set priorities? Our main priority in Cleveland is to protect the health of people. And as we set in motion those things that we need to do to protect the health of people and double down on it now, since the governor has decided to gradually reopen, we will incorporate some business sides to this too, because in order for us to move into the future, there has to be sooner or later a gradual reopening of this economy so that people can go back to work and things like that. But the thing that you're talking about in regards to who is being impacted and the possibility of that impact increasing is true. What the pandemic has really brought to light is what people have talked about for some time, but now we can see it in the raw. And that is a sense of inequity and a sense of disparity in terms of who is affected by the downturn in the economy and the impact of the infection of the virus. There's disproportionate impact on certain populations. As you know, if you're older, and particularly if you have some chronic underlying illness, you're not only susceptible to the infection, but you're more likely to die from it. So you're right that we have to look at this in a broad way, not to be so narrow-minded to say we need just to open our economy, but we have to open our economy in a way that allows us to monitor the health and well-being of people so we can see if what we're doing is working in terms of the health of people. If it's not, then we will have to adjust. But this is sometimes you deal with the hand you dealt. And this is where the state is moving in terms of gradual reopening, which I think is a more responsible way than just flipping the switch. But in doing that, it does mean that there will be greater risk for people, and particularly the people that you mentioned.
Thank you, Mayor Jackson. Our next person on the line is Jamie. Go ahead, Jamie. You're live with Mayor Jackson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is Reverend Jamie Tirado, Emmanuel Church, West 41st Street. Yes, my question is, what is the guidelines for the churches as we reopen the churches? We already are practicing the safe and the distance rules or regulations to try to keep the people safe. My concern is when we open, sometimes people in the community, sometimes they don't understand what is the guidelines and whatever the government has established for the churches, and a lot of people are confused.
Well, Pastor, let me say to you that you're correct, that wherever there is some mass gathering or something where there's more than 10 people, they would say, in a certain location, it becomes very problematic. And as you know, churches are places where there's mass gatherings. And now the governor is setting the standards by which he is allowing businesses to open in terms of what restrictions he will put on them. He has also said that churches have more latitude and flexibility in regards to what they do. And I guess that is his attempt to not overstep when it comes to the question of church and state. But he's given great latitude there. And so in giving that great latitude, Pastor, you will have the opportunity to set the standards that you believe are appropriate. I would suggest that they be standards that will allow people, if you're going to have a service that is where people attend, that they be properly distanced, that they wear masks, and that they have the sanitizing of the sanctuary in a way that when people come in and go out, that is sanitized, and the use of technology so that there can be services that are conducted, and they be conducted virtually as well. So there is going to be a difficult time for everyone as we readjust to this new reality and get back to what will become a new norm. And until that time, there has to be great discretion on the part of those who have the ability to say to people, this is what you should do and do not do. And pastors have a great role in this. The key here is how do we maintain the safety of the people, health of people, stop the spread of the virus, and to ensure that as we do that, we are then prepared to gradually get back to some form of normalcy.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up, we've got Lydia. Go ahead, Lydia. What is your question?
This is Lydia.
Yes, Lydia. What is your question?
The question, what I can say, because I made a comment before, and I have been listening and hearing all the messages from the governor. And I think he's doing the right thing. It's just probably to reinforce the public, the people, to follow the recommendations, I can say, to help to go through this. And I feel that's what we have. That's what I feel. To be more firm and probably clear in writing, and at the different, I can say, situations. And so that's what I feel is to implement all these recommendations that have been presented.
Yes, Lydia, and you're correct, because that is why we're taking in Cleveland a health approach, and we're incorporating in that health approach the reopening of the economy. Our primary concern is the safety and the health of people. And that's why we are going to, we're doing now, and we're going to ramp up and increase resources and deploy people into education about the virus, prevention. What do you do to prevent yourself from being infected and infecting others? Stay at home unless necessary. If it is necessary that you leave, then wear a mask, keep social distance, and also wash your hands frequently, whether you're at home or not, or use sanitizer for your hands. And with that approach and maintaining that approach, then when the economy is open gradually and people begin to come in more contact with each other, then there's less likelihood that there will be a passing on of the virus. Now, and the other thing that is so important is to, with young people, to inform them, just because they are less likely to be a fatality as a result of being infected, it does not mean that they won't take it home or come in contact with someone who is an elderly person, like their grandparents or or someone that a neighbor down the street, and if they infect them and that person is older with underlying illness, that person will not just be infected, they will have a high probability of dying. And so that educational component there and enforcing that, other than just putting a curfew on people and telling them you can't leave your house and quarantine people and say you can't leave, other than that, people have to be responsible. And many times if people will be responsible if we give them the proper information, the education on how to protect themselves and their families and their friends, how to prevent things, and then what to do if you find yourself with symptoms or you suspect that you may have contacted the virus. Those are the things we will have to do from the health perspective and really focus in on that. If that does not work and people just believe because of the gradual reopening, everything is over with and we're okay, if that's what people will believe and they begin to behave like that, then we will have not only a spike in infections and death, this pandemic will be pretty much out of control.
So, Mayor, not only do we have folks live on this telephone town hall on their telephone, we also have people that are listening to it on the World Wide Web. And we have an online question submitted by Eugene, and he asks, on the federal level, will there be additional revenue for local governments?
Congress lady.
Thank you. Eugene, thank you for your question. Yes, we are fighting for resources. We try to make sure that the White House is clear on the fact that as they talk about heroes, they need to be talking about police and fire and EMS and teachers, all of which come under state and local government. So they are in negotiations now. We do believe there's going to be state and local government money, and I know for one, I will fight for that money, and if it's not in the bill, then I will not be supporting it. So we're doing the best we can. We hope that we'll know something by the end of next week.
And Congress lady, to that point, as I talk to mayors in Ohio, and I know this is probably the same in other parts of the country, and governors, that the impact of the downturn in the economy has had significant impact on revenues, and our ability to deliver service, just basic service, is more strained and stressed as less revenue is coming in because of that downturn. And I know that mayors and governors are looking at the next round of money to have in there something that will allow us to have some relief from that, so that we can continue to provide basic service, public safety, or whatever it may be, and also at the same time have the resources to put a health model in place to protect people. And in order for us to do those two things simultaneously with that increased cost that is we're being asked to bear because of the pandemic, the only way that we can do that is to have a revenue stream from somewhere, because it's not coming from the normal part of taxation through a thriving economy.
I agree, Mayor. We want to put resources here. We want them to be flexible. Too often when money comes from the federal government, it is so strictly controlled. We want to make sure that it is flexible enough for you to fill some holes if you need to. But we do know that cities and counties and states all across the United States are suffering because of a loss of revenue, especially tax revenue. You can't get revenue if people are not coming out and people are not spending. And so it's a major problem. We know that it is, and we believe that we will be more successful in this next package than we were in the last.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Our next question comes from Mamie. Go ahead, ma'am. You are live on the call. What is your question?
My question is testing. I live in an independent dwelling for seniors. We are attached to a nursing home. It's called Eliza Bryant Village and Manor Lodge and Estates. We're all fairly decent in, how do you say, following rules and staying safe.
Mm-hmm.
Our being older people, we still have family. Even if I am a carrier, I can still pass it to my grand or great-grand. Why are we not, at this point, being tested? I know we can get infected, but at this point, now that things are opening up, how is it that the later seniors are not being tested and a lot sooner?
Okay.
Mayor, if I may, Mayor?
Yes, and then I'll follow it up because that's a perfect question.
In our last bill, we put $4 billion to do testing specifically in hotspots. Senior citizens' home facilities are considered hotspots. So that money should be coming to you very quickly, or at least to the state and then to the cities, as well as there are resources in our last package for mobile testing units. So we are going to be having vans and or buses come to facilities like yours to do testing, and I have already spoken to some people from Eliza Bryant, so you should be getting tested very, very soon.
And to follow up on what the Congresswoman has said, that is the biggest debate between those who want to open the economy and those health models that said it's premature. The health model would say that until we have universal testing so that we know the condition of every individual, and also a vaccine that would allow people to move around with some immunity, until such time we have those two things, then it is premature to open the economy. And of course, as you just mentioned, ma'am, those things are not in place. And that is why it is so important that we double and triple down on and make this opening look at a health model in terms of what can we do and where do we put resources to be able to monitor this thing as we go. As the Congresswoman has said, we understand the hotspots. Our health departments and our medical people know where they are. They know that congregate living, nursing homes, or long-term care centers, high-rises with seniors. We know that that density and the vulnerability of that population creates hotspots for us, and there's tremendous infection opportunities that go on there. And so we're focusing our local health initiative in partnership with our medical institution in those hotspots. But the resources needed for that, and the devices and the equipment and material needed to do that, and getting that out into the hands of our local health departments and medical institutions so that they can systematically go through those high density areas and hotspots is key. And that's why you have a lot of people saying that this is just premature. We shouldn't be doing this until we do this other thing first. But you play the hand you dealt. And so at the federal level and the state level, they're saying open. And governors and the president are moving in that direction. That is why we're attempting locally to make our focus on health and trying to monitor this thing in terms of education and prevention and intervention when necessary, but trying to monitor it to make sure that it doesn't get out of control. And it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge just based on what you said.
Mayor Jackson, next up we've got Carol with a question. Go ahead, Carol. You're live on the call.
Hi, thank you. I agree with you say about this war is going to be won on the local level. But there's one thing that concerns me a lot now is we need people to wear masks. In the stores, they say no shirts, no shirt, no service. Well, why can't it be no mask, no service? I go into some of these stores, and you see all these people with no mask on. And this is because it's not their right to infect other people. Just like stores say you no longer can walk into a store without shoes, you no longer can walk into a place of business without a mask on or get on transportation without a mask on. Well, there's not much we can do to prevent anything, but we can do this little bit. And I'm really disappointed that the governor wavered on this. We should have masks in place. So I don't know what kind of question or what do you guys think that we could do at least on the local level to try to take control of something?
Well, you're right that when the governor announced what he has announced, he did not make it mandatory to wear masks, and he has left that up to the establishments to say to their patrons that you can't come in here unless you have a mask on, or maybe the establishments would provide the person who came in and said, here's a mask, you have to wear it if you're going to be here. So he's left a lot of discretion up to the individual businesses, and sometimes you just need to tell people what to do, right? And so with that, I would say that if we had a stronger mandate on that, it would be much easier for us on a local level as to what we can and should do. I agree with you that if people are out, they should be wearing a mask. A mask does not prevent you, is not a total protection, but it helps to mitigate the risk. And now the other side of this is as they opening up the small businesses, or they're doing manufacturing, and they're having people reorient their space in a way that there can be social distancing. And I believe that they will probably have a stronger approach towards wearing masks when people are working. If you work in a factory or an assembly line, they'll probably create more social distance and probably will require a mask, if in fact that's a condition for you being able to reopen. Now that's a strong mandate. It's the same thing with a store. If you're the condition for you being reopened or to continue to have customers, you have to limit the number of customers that come in so that you have based on your space, and they all have to be protected in terms of a mask, and so do your employees. What you're saying, that approach, in my opinion, would have been the best approach. Now, that being said, I will give the governor credit. He has given local governments in Ohio a basic framework in which we can operate under. And he's done a great job so far. That is one of the areas that mayors and local health departments are looking at in terms of wish that was a little stronger.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up, we've got a question from David. David, go ahead. You're live on the call. What is your question?
Thank you, Mayor Jackson, for taking the call tonight. My question as a local business owner is, when will City Hall and recreation centers start to open, and what social distancing or rotation of staff do you anticipate when that is able to happen? I do agree that the health first is a smart approach.
Well, what we're doing to answer very succinctly and quickly, I don't know when we're going to open up recreation centers or City Hall. City Hall is open to essential employees on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but not to the public. The public can come there if they need permits or stuff like that. They leave security, they collect it, then they give it to the people who are responsible for whatever the request is. They then act on it. Now, that being said, right now it's difficult for me to say when City Hall or recreation will be open, because I have to see what's going to happen when this gradual reopen does occur. Are we exacerbating the problem? And if we are, then it may have to be more restrictive in what we do, simply because we can't put people at risk, whether they're our employees or the public. And as you know, children in a rec center and running around and being in that kind of proximity with each other is really a fertile ground for the spread of the infection. They'll take it home, and if they have a grandparent or something, they could get it. If they have underlying illnesses, they could die. So we're looking at all that in terms of like pools. Are the pools, outdoor pools, opening this year? If they are we going to say only so many, based on the size of the pool, only so many people can be in the pools, and then they cannot be within a certain distance of each other, whether they're children or the lifeguard? If we're talking about activity inside the rec centers, what type of activities can we have for kids to come in where there does not have to be physical contact, where social distancing is something that they can do but still take part in some recreational activity, or it might be computer labs, or it may be something like that. So we're looking at that, and I have my people tasked to give me some suggestions, because normally we would open up our outdoor pools in June. So we're looking at that now. Kids already are out of school, and they're roaming around with no rec centers. But we want to make sure that when it gets hot, that we provide something or some alternative for them. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Hey, our next question comes from Alex online, and Alex asks, how has the city's budget for the year been affected due to COVID-19?
Well, what we did for this year, 2020, we anticipated a recession. The economy was going quite well, and as a result of the economy going well, we were able to have a structurally balanced budget, which means we raised enough money in the year to cover whatever the cost of operating the government and delivering service in that year. And since the economy was doing so well, we were able to do that and also have a surplus. So what we did is we developed a budget for 2020 that we believe would hedge against a recession. Now, we anticipated that the recession would come in the fourth quarter of this year or the first quarter of 2021. And we figured that if it came, depending on the duration and the depth of it, then we could continue our operation as normal, provide the service, and not have to lay people off. Well, what happened was it happened in the beginning of the second quarter. And so we don't know how long the duration will be, but we know that the loss in revenue is significant. Now, that being said, since we budgeted anticipating, we do have the ability to carry on services without laying off people as of this moment. But as we look at the tax receipts coming in, we will be able this month to determine where the trend is and where the trajectory is. The first quarter we did well because there was still economic activity. April, we began to lose money in terms of income tax receipts. We're going to be looking at May to see how that is, and based on that, we will see where this is going and where it's trending, and then we will take appropriate action to cut expenses in order to have a balanced budget as we have to have by law. Now, the final part on that, as you know, a lot of revenue comes from just people being out, activities, whether they're going to a sporting event, a restaurant, a convention, a play, a movie theater. And so you have admission tax, you have parking tax, you have those kind of bed taxes, you have those kind of taxes that are just associated with just a large number of people just being around and going to events, staying at hotels, all that. Well, that's come to pretty much an end. So all the revenue associated with that is gone. It's pretty much zero right now. But the main source of revenue for the city of Cleveland is in payroll taxes. And as we measure that, we'll get a trend as to how all of what I just mentioned, plus the loss of jobs, how that is impacting the payroll taxes, which will then help to define our actions going forward as we project out what that loss in revenue will be going to the end of the year, and what our cost is. Then we'll have to cut costs in order to balance a budget by the end of the year.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Let's go back to another caller question. We've got James on the line. James, go ahead with your question, please. Hello, James.
James. Oh, well, our question was, how do they plan to protect the people that uses public transportation, far as the rapid, like myself? I do have a vehicle, and I have been driving because the type of job I have, I had to go in. But I'm more concerned that if I decide to go back to using RTA, train, and the people on the buses, how can we distinguish social distancing on the rapid? Because at times it can be really crowded, and then we were before sitting side by side.
We know that's a great question. I do not know the protocol or policy of RTA. I do know that they are attempting on the buses to have social distancing and not have people sit in every seat. And so you'll find more people standing because of fewer people are able to sit because of that social distancing. I don't believe that they are requiring people to wear a mask. I don't believe that they are. I do believe that that is part of what they're doing with their drivers. And I'm assuming the same thing is applying to the rapid. And I also know that that they are adding additional vehicles because of the social distancing. They can't put as many people on the bus or on the rapid car. That they were supposed to be adding additional vehicles to pick up people so that they can keep that social distancing and not be crowded. Now the other part of that is that, as you said, you're out because you have to be out. Imagine if you didn't have to be out, you'd be at home. And because people are most people are taking this serious. So the amount of ridership on the buses and the rapid, I believe, is substantially down. Just like on airlines, the ridership is down. And I'll give you an example at the Hopkins Airport. They did, I think, for 1 month they did 15,000 people came through. Well, that sounds like a lot, but they used to do 15,000 in a day. And that just indicates how people are not moving around. And since they're not moving around, it makes it easier for this public transportation side as well as commercial airlines to create that social distance. The key, as a lady said earlier, there's still no mandate for masks. As I said, it's not a panacea. It doesn't protect everything, but it is does mitigate the problem somewhat. But there is no mandate for that.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Now, everyone on this interactive telephone town hall, this is an opportunity for you to weigh in with an opinion. We've got a quick poll question. So you can press the button corresponding to your answer on your telephone to weigh in. And our question is as follows. We want to know how you prefer to be contacted by our office. Press 1 if you'd like us to contact you by phone. Press 2 if you'd like to be contacted by email. Press 3 by text message. Press 4 through social media. Again, we want to know how you prefer to be contacted by our office. Press 1 for phone, 2 for email, 3 for text message, press 4 by social media. All right, thank you very much for taking the time to do that poll. Let's go back to the Q&A. We've got Ruby on the line. Ruby, go ahead. You're live. What's your question?
Good evening, Mayor. As a healthcare professional, I'm a little bit concerned, well, I'm a lot concerned about the state of our community. And I guess the masks are a big thing that we're talking about today. And I have to beg to differ with you. If I wear my mask, I protect you. If you wear your mask, you protect me. So that's about as simple as the most simplest way that I can explain or educate a lay person. But the problem that I'm having is that I see in my community is they don't even have, and when we talk about resources, they don't even have access to simple math. I was going in the post office the other day, and there was an elderly gentleman coming out of the post office. And I asked him where his mask was. And you know what he told me? He said he didn't have one. He didn't even know how to get one. And those things to me are simple. And like you said, you can't mandate people to wear masks. But I think if they had more access to the simple masks where they can get one and put one on, to teach one, do one, I mean, I think it would just be, I think it would add to the social distancing and the buy-in from the community. But a lot of them don't even have access to that.
Okay. Well, let me, so you know, I did not downgrade the use of the mask. I was saying that from my understanding, it is not 100%. It's not a panacea, but it does serve to mitigate, and it does help. And so I wasn't trying to minimize the importance of it. I actually think it's very important that people wear masks when they're moving about. And the issue that you point out around just the availability of things to be able to protect yourself is a very important aspect of this. And so the question really becomes, how do people access those things if they want something, they need something? How do they access it? Now, I know, Congresswoman, in terms of what the stimulus dollars, I know one of the things that they looked at was protective equipment. And I know they're not in the legislation, they're not talking about you have to do this and you have to do that. They just set general parameters. But I imagine as part of the stimulus dollars that having a supply where people could access that supply if they don't have access to it would probably be eligible.
Yeah, you know, getting masks is difficult. So we are working on trying to make sure that in places where people gather, there are masks available. Now, how that's going to work, Mayor, I'm not sure.
Right. It's an implementation and operational side of this.
Right.
Right. But her point is well taken, and I've taken the note in my brain, and those who are on this event who work for me will make a note of that as we look at what we're doing and how we're going to move ahead. So thanks for the suggestion.
Thank you, Mayor. Next up, we've got Nathan on the line. Go ahead with your question, please. You're live on the call, Nathan.
Hey, hi, Brother Mayor. I think you and Congresswoman Fudge are doing a spectacular job, and we thank you. Mayor, I'm going to, you've answered a lot of my questions, but I do have a question for Congresswoman Fudge.
Okay.
And my question is, the WHO and the CDC have now affirmed that this virus will not eliminate itself even through tropical weather, meaning summer. And they have declared this because other countries that are in warmer environments than ours by far are still having a heck of a time trying to fight this virus. So they've declared that the tropic is not going to affect us or make it go away. So here's my question. My question is, we've talked about doing the canvassing and doing the testing. But what about the tracing? Because tracing to me is really the backbone of this whole thing, because whoever's going out tracing is actually following the infected places where somebody who is infected has been. That means that they are always going to be 100% in harm's way. So do we have the federal funds, or do we have the funds to give to the city to set up for tracing? Because that manpower, woman power, is really the key to finding out and getting to the root of this whole thing.
Thank you for the question. Absolutely. What we put in the last CARES package was $11 billion to do testing as well as tracing. We know that contact tracing has to be a part of it. So the projection is that they will be hired throughout the country in the next, I'm hoping in the next 25 to 35 days, about 100,000 to as many as 200,000 people who will do nothing but contact tracing. They can even do it from their homes. It's just a matter of them knowing who has contacted it or is a carrier or who actually has COVID-19, and then get from them the people that they've been around, and then they contact those people. So there is $11 billion in this bill we passed about 10 days ago. So I'm hopeful that that will start very rapidly, because that is a major part of how we start to slow this thing down, is to know who you've come in contact with. So yes, thank you. Great question.
And to follow up on what the Congresswoman said, that you're right on tracing. Particularly since there's no universal testing in place where we already know who has what and who is infected, and being able to monitor them or to keep them in a situation where they cannot infect others, and since there's no vaccine. And so tracing becomes one of the only tools you have, and not having adequate tracing component to any health model that model will not be effective in terms of prevention or intervention. So you're right. Tracing is very key. What we're doing, our non-essential employees, that these are employees that may be working from home. They don't have to go in. They're not the safety forces or waste collectors or people in utilities that have to do the things, and they have to come to work every day. But we have people who are essential, and they come in to work on a periodic basis, critical, who just work just like a normalcy. Then we have non-essential who may work from home. Many of the non-essentials don't have a lot of work to do. And so what we're doing, we're redeploying them into exactly what you're talking about, doing outreach, identifying, and then having another portion of that group then be the people, as the Congresswoman said, can be on the phone and call and say, you've been in contact with this, we're asking this question, that question, those kinds of things. So we're attempting to redeploy people in order to increase our capacity to do that. And until such time as we are able to get universal testing, that will be a monumental task to kind of try to run that down on everyone, particularly as infections spike, and particularly if it spikes as they reopen an economy. That tracing is key, as you mentioned.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We've got another call. The next one is from Waverly. Go ahead, Waverly. What is your question?
Hey, good afternoon, Mayor Jackson. I certainly appreciate you taking the time to answer some questions for the city of Cleveland. My question is for the small business owners, and I appreciate you guys making some funds available for people I guess, in the urban areas that own barbershops and salons and that are independent contractors. When the pandemic first hit, Kevin Smartser was so kind to give me a personal call and told me that there was going to be forgiveness for the loan that I have for the city of Cleveland for a month or so. My question to you is, will the city, maybe in a month, month and a half, 2 months down the road, check back in with the small businesses? Because, I mean, specifically in my industry, like my app that I book my appointments on, it's all booked up next Friday and Saturday. So it's going to be like Christmas and Easter coming out the gate for a barber and a stylist. But at the end of the day, haircut or a new hairdo or nails or whatever is a luxury. People are going to probably start doubling down on paying their mortgages, paying their cars, insurance, things of that nature. Will you guys be checking back in with the small businesses to see if we're doing well or, medium, to see if there are any more forgivenesses for us?
Well, let's as you know, we announced a few days ago our part of our Restart Cleveland, and there's about $10 million that we put into assistance to small and medium-sized businesses, and about 2 or 2.5 million of that is really focused on barbershops, salons, and restaurants and storefronts, the ones that were hit from the beginning because they were ordered closed. And as you know, not only do we have the delayed in payment of existing loans, we put $10,000 for small businesses so that they can access that in order to help cover the rental service or utilities for the month of March and April. And now with this new package, we have up to $20,000 per small business in this for the salons and the barbershops and the restaurants and storefronts, of which $10,000 of that that low interest loan, $10,000 at $20,000 low interest loan can be forgiven if it's used to purchase what you need to have protective equipment as mandated by the reopening. And so, yes, we're constantly trying to stay on top of what's happening out there, and we know that that small and even medium-sized business have had significant impact because even when they reduce their costs down to minimum, they still have a cost while they have zero revenue, and most people don't have the cash flow to survive that. And so they're going to go out of business. And so what we're attempting to do is to carry them for that period of time and to help bridge that time until such time they can get back on their feet and then cover some of their costs of ramping back up. Because, as you said, even when you ramp back up and you reopen, your costs are going to go back to what it was, but your revenue is not going to go back because people are going to be making other choices. So you're going to have a big gap even if you're open. And so we're trying to help in that regard. So we keep checking in, we keep having conversations with people so that we can have the ability to know where we can best help them and how we can efficiently give them the support that they need to survive.
Next up on the call, we've got Andrew. Go ahead, Andrew. You're live with Mayor Frank Jackson.
Hello, Mayor Frank Jackson, and
yes.
This is Fudge. I don't really have a question because y'all answered most of all my questions. I'm a 77-year-old black man in the city of Cleveland, born and raised here, and I'm scared, about the young people not wearing the masks and stuff, and I wish we can get more education going for especially the young people, to how important it is that they wear masks, because I'm going to wear the mask every time I go because I want to protect them, but they don't seem to want to protect me. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Well, on that point, that is why the young lady, some calls back, said that she had hoped that there would be a stronger mandate on the wearing of masks, and that, however, does not exist. So what we have to do is provide that education and provide prevention, and let them know how that is so helpful in terms of prevention, and make it personal for them, because I know that young people do not want to be the cause of the death of their grandparents or someone in their family or a neighbor who has chronic illness. Then we have to look at what the other lady said, who is a healthcare worker, who says that people just don't access even if they wanted it. So these are a lot of gaps that are out there, and that is why you have this big debate going on about all these gaps in terms of protecting people and protecting their health, and whether or not this reopening, whether gradual or just flipping the switch, whether all this stuff is premature. And so it's a big debate, but that debate pretty much is over with, because governments at the federal and state level are allowing things to happen in terms of the gradual opening of the economy. And I think Ohio is being more responsible as to how it's doing it, but still it's going to cause contact with people, and is not directing resources into the messaging of prevention and education and providing people with the things that they need in order to protect themselves. It's not there yet on the health side. And that's why people are arguing about whether or not this is premature. But the messaging, and that's part of my message all the time. When I talk to you, I see young people walking down the street, even my grandkids. I say to them, where's your mask? Where's your mask? Put it on.
So I'm being told that we need to begin to wrap up this call, so that means we are coming to the end of this live event this evening. I would like to thank everyone for taking the time to join us for this important telephone town hall with Mayor Jackson. Now, Mayor Jackson and Congresswoman Fudge, do you have any closing remarks?
Congress Lady?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just say to all of the people who joined and the people that you talked to, these are difficult times. We've never experienced anything like this, and there are lots of things that we do not know. So as we go forward, we're going to be doing some trial and error just like everybody else. So just stick with us. Know that we're going to do the best we know how to protect you, your families, and our communities. And just stay safe. Just stay safe. Thanks,
and
Mayor.
for me, thank you, Congresswoman. And for me, the message is stay at home. Stay at home unless you need to go out. And if you have to go out, keep a social distance and wear a mask. And constantly wash your hands. And do not rely on government or business to deliver the correct message to the people who you care about. The message should be delivered by you to who you care about or to anybody that you see, because people will pay attention to you when they won't pay attention to government or business. So you are part of the solution. Tell people, stay at home. Take this serious. Pandemic is not over with. Just because they're allowing people to move around is not over with. Stay at home. If you have to go out, wear a mask, keep your social distance, and wash your hands. So I thank you for attending, and I appreciate all of your questions.